All right, so with that said, did anyone have any questions? We did have a couple of panelists who had to step out for other engagements. So did anyone have any questions for any of the remaining panelists we have? We still have Jennifer and Dr. Rickard and Terry. If you have questions for, let's see, Alana or Joanna, we can forward questions to her and either have her reach out to you or we'll help coordinate in getting you some answers.
I did want to also invite panelists to ask each other questions. I think that can be useful too.
I think the only thing I will share or add is that I just want to make sure that everybody that's on here that came to get something just understands that there's a lot of myths around suicide and suicide prevention, and especially with kids. And I think it's important to just always mention that it's okay to ask direct questions about suicide, because we're not implanting it. If they're already thinking about it, they're already thinking about it. It's kind of like sex education, right? I mean, I think the kids are talking about it. They're behind the scenes talking about misinformation, and it's up to us as the adults to make sure that we provide them with right information. The number one thing that happens at any of my trainings is parents show up with questions about how do my kids respond when someone that they know is suicidal and they're supposed to keep it secret, or they're finding about worries about someone being suicidal on a social media platform. Like, what's the response? And my response always is to get someone that can help you at the school level, the teacher, the administrators, your parents, if you can. But something that involves death isn't a secret. But at the administrator or the parent or the adult level, it's really recognizing signs that are unique and different from their baseline function, and then just being willing to ask, are you feeling sad, depressed, down? Right now has been really hard. And are you thinking about suicide? Have you ever had those thoughts? Is anybody around you talking about that? And I think it's important that we just look at kind of how do we manage that? Like, what can we do a better job to make sure that those types of conversations are happening? And I know it's uncomfortable. And my gauge always is, if it's uncomfortable for me or the adults, then it's worse for the kids. So it's really our job to model that type of communication.
Thanks, Julie, for sharing that. I can definitely say that going into the classrooms, I mean, I see the kids most of the time once, but we try to build that rapport right away. And I have been really impressed with how open many kids are, and how they are saying that they're really struggling with a lot, and they're looking for someone to ask them. They really want people to be curious. They want the adults in their life to ask, because when I go in there and I start asking them questions, they open up, you know what I mean? So I know that I'm basically a perfect stranger, and yet because I'm asking, they start to explore that. So like how Alana was saying, after I went to some of the presentations at her school that I was doing, they actually created like a group for those students that were asking a lot of those questions. And it turned out, I think Sheila wouldn't mind if I said this, but it was a lot of the students that didn't have friends. Yeah. And so then they created a group for those folks, and who were, in these remote little boxes. Now all of a sudden they at least had a place for them to build connections and friends with each other. So I won't go on and on, but I appreciate that.
No, and one of the things that came out of our focus group is exactly that the kids said, adults at the school will say, are you okay? And then I'm going to always say, yes. And then what I'm hoping is that they're going to ask, what they said was 3 times, at least 3 times, are you okay? Because by the 3rd time, I figured out that they actually do care, and they don't want the nice answer. Yeah. But when the first few times, I'm testing to see if they can even handle it, and if they keep coming back. And when they finally keep coming back, I will then respond with the truth, around that. And I think that's the piece that we as adults fail on. You know, we've got to keep coming back and saying, hey, I'm here. It's okay to have that conversation. But what often happens is our voice is saying one thing, but our body language is showing that we're uncomfortable and not okay with that conversation. And I think
Or not
that's
interested.
where we get stuck.
Yeah, or not interested, right? We're like, oh, are you okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Or our watch is going off, right? And then we're looking away, which shows that I'm not really present with you. I've got other things. So if this isn't going to take long, I'm with you.
Yeah.
And so I think we're stuck in that.
Julie, not just to you, but maybe also to Jennifer or to Terry, but people are interested in how can we get teen focus groups? How can we make that happen? How can we hear what our teens need? How can we gather them somewhere? Do you guys have any suggestions for that?
Well, I can share how we did it. So at the coalition, I have several people. So there's many schools, right, in our district. And so I have someone from the middle schools as well as the high school. We're in 2 counties. And so it's people from both sides of the river. And we just had them pick each of the representative was to go back to the school counselors and say, pick 3 kids, 4 kids, however many you want that are willing to participate. And then they just kind of put it out there. I created a flyer. They handed it out to kids that they thought might be interested. I figured more is better. And, you know, what we got was a really good array of kids that were, you know, part of student leadership, and the kids that were kind of being bullied and struggling and feeling like they were in all different groups. And then we had a kind of a set way that we met with them. I kind of did a presentation on suicide prevention and the purpose and what we were hoping to gain from them. And man, they gave us so much.
They ran with it, right? That's been our experience too.
Yep.
Is that when we open that door, kind of however you can connect, they run with it.
Yeah.
I think Jennifer and Terry also want to say something. So Jennifer,
well, I was just going to add that, you know, there was a question in there, does culture matter? And I would say that, I would say yes, that you have to really understand your populations of students and ways that they connect. But I also would say that in addition to that, that there already are embedded leadership opportunities, like if your high school does Link Crew, for example, if they really follow the protocols for developing Link Crew, which is a leadership development program that's around student engagement, the way that you pick your leaders is to make sure that it's across the board. It meets gender, race, you know, different connections. So embedded a lot of times in schools are already groups of students that are looking for ways to help and to support, and it's in their nature, and they want to share and get involved. And I think during this crisis and this pandemic, I think that our kids are waiting for opportunity to come together and to ask them questions and get them involved. So whether it is already pre-developed groups of students that already exist that want to be leaders, I think that now more than ever, I think that they are waiting for us to ask them what do you think? And I know that I think it is in King County. I wanted to mention Puget Sound ESD. They were really helpful and responsive to me when I was asking for more resources. But what came out of that was there was a BIPOC specific group of students that is just overflowing with students who are also just a place to talk about and discuss what is happening in our country and access there. So I would just say that our kids are waiting. So just ask, you know, organized in any way that you want. They're looking for a platform to connect and share. And in any way, counselors are always a really good resource to gather students together. Our kids are missing out on youth sports, and you know, so they're just dying, literally dying, because and are looking for ways to connect.
Thank you. Terry, did you want to speak at all to getting focus groups together or?
Yeah, I wanted to share like what we had experienced in this 2020, and that it was in February. We had in one community, we had one death by suicide, and then there were multiple triggers that had caused, like some serious concern. And what we ended up doing is, because I'm one person working this, I'm looking for someone to come in and help me. But what we did is we had the local clinic, we had the local high school, we had some social workers, and we had some mental health or some clinicians. And we also had concerned community members. What we did is we sat down collectively as a group because we had to address this in front of the whole school. And what we decided to do was set up, some presentations, because there's the school that we went into, it's in Chelam, and that's like 98% Native American students. And we had decided to do a presentation. So we pulled in two guys that are, making their way through the music. They're what are those things? What are those awards called? Academy Award winners on the Native American music stream. And anyway, we pulled them in. I got up a presentation because the individual who died by suicide took his life because of bullying. So I came up with a presentation for bullying, and we had a couple of other folks, people come in and do a presentation. And then we ended up doing a community dinner. So the presentation in the morning went really well. The kids were pretty receptive to it. My son, he's 16, and last year he was accused of being a bully. And in my line of work, I can't have that, especially with my own children, because I just don't think it's right. I went through bullying when I was in high school, and the way I took care of it was with my left hand and my right hand, and business was taken care of, and I didn't have to worry about it again. But in today's society, it's a little bit different. You can't behave in that manner. I know it was a little barbaric, but hey, I got it done. So the presentation that I did, because of my son being accused of it, what I did is I made him come up with the statistics about bullying and how it takes place with it, like just all the numbers. And then I also made him identify the different types of bullying that takes place. And there were a couple of other things that we had covered in the presentation. And what I made him do was go before his colleagues and do the presentation. And so what ended up happening at the end of the presentation with my son doing it, the kid that actually called him the bully and the teachers that called him the bully actually came forward and apologized, because the kid that actually, so the kid put himself in a locker and he got claustrophobic and he started to thrash in the closed locker and he couldn't get out. And because of the pressure on the lock, my son couldn't open it, and the coaches walked in. And that's when they had said that Joseph had, my son's name is Joseph, that he had bullied the kid and locked him in the locker. So the kid came forward after the presentation and just said, hey, look, I owe you an apology. I didn't know that had taken place. And so the teachers was like, oh, you didn't do this. So it was a little too late, but apologies were still served. And so I shared this story with the kids over in Chelam, and they know my son because my son plays basketball with them, and they play football against each other and, things like that. And so the kids kind of tied into it because I felt like I had normalized it by pulling my son into the middle of it because he's the same age. Had I taken the approach that I was the one that did the presentation, I think I would have got less attention. And then when we pulled in the two guys and the other folks, because they're, well known in their own small community, and it's a pretty small, tight niche community, the kids really, really open to it, because majority of the kids at the presentation that we did earlier in the day ended up coming to the community dinner as well. So our community dinner was to reach out to the parents and the community members to see what it is that we can do to better assist them. So it was kind of like a focus group. And what we ended up doing is we served the dinner, and then we ended up breaking up into like 5 different groups. And it was kind of cool because in these different groups, the one that I facilitated, I had a couple of students in there and a couple of law enforcement guys came over, and I had a couple of elder community members. And it was absolutely fantastic because these guys ended up sharing some really, really good information. And the ones that were in my group happened to be all men. I don't know why, but all of them just kind of sort of gravitated towards me, and so did the students. And what we found out about from our students is that, yeah, they didn't have any friends, so that it became more of an isolation for them. And then in that isolation, their mind just kind of sort of started to roam. And the ideations had started to creep into this. And then the law enforcement guys kind of stepped in, and they were telling their sides of how it works, but what would be best for them. And I think Julia was the one that suggested this, and it was a good suggestion, and I had brought it forward, and we're looking into ways of how we might be able to incorporate this. But bring a clinician, hire a clinician on within the PD, and take the clinicians on the suicide event calls. We're trying to budget it, and we're trying to get it in there, and we're trying to get people interested in it. We're struggling a little bit because it's been a couple of years since I've talked to Julie, and but we're making our way with it. And then the elders amongst tribal members are pretty important. What we try to do is we always try to make sure that when an elder is speaking, we give the utmost respect. When they're giving suggestions, you take that and you allow it to be for what it is, and or take what it is that you got from that elder and incorporate it into your daily life. We do have an elders group up here also. They go specifically in this event that I'm talking about that happened in February in 2020. We had some elders there as well, and they came from our elder circle. And so what they do is that they come in and they help us out with, if the kids don't want to go to a clinician, or if the young adult doesn't want to go to a clinician, then this is where the elder groups come in and they help. It could be either from a curriculum, it could be from a traditional aspect. It could be, just learning how to do something. If the kid is interested in doing, like our powwow dances. So what the elder would do is help them set up and make in regalia, the different types the different dances. So we have a traditional, we have a fancy, we have jingle, those different dances. And so the elder would help this student from the beginning until they are actually welcome into the powwow society. And once they're done with getting the welcoming, then there's that constant follow-up. So that's what our elder group does, and it's pretty cool. I can definitely appreciate what those folks do, and they've really helped me out, to be honest with you. So on that day, those are some of the resources that we tapped into. We also tapped into some state clinicians, because the community is so small and our clinic is really small. We don't have the resources available to help us. And this was such a big event because of the young person that had died by suicide, triggered a lot of suicide ideations and behaviors. So we had to scramble, and it was a pretty big group, but we were able to minimize it and then get the kids back on track and get them focused back on school and what their extracurricular activities were. So that was really helpful. talking about our elders, we have our business council. We have a couple of folks on there that are elders, and specifically there's one here in the Omak area. Here just recently, we had a veteran. I don't know where to help out or tap into veteran support groups here within the Okanagan County. I'm still trying to get that figured out. And it's really not that hard, but you know, I have other things that I have to do for my grant, unfortunately. But this young man had serious ideation. He is PSTD. He drinks alcohol and he does drugs. So he was under the influence when this all had taken place, and his aunt had contacted me and said, "Hey, I need help." And I went, okay. So I initiated the calls to get this young man in to get help. But what this elder did, she also contacted him, and he directly showed up at this person's house and had talked to him. And so that's the impact that our elders have on our young adults and our youth. And so now I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit of a side story here. When I was doing my graduate program and I was writing my final paper, I did my research was on the gap, and I called it the gap because there's a gap between our elders and our youth with education. And in doing this research, I had put out a survey amongst the Quinault Indian Nation. I'm Colville, and my husband and my children are Quinault, and we were living over there while I was doing my education. And 84%, one of my questions was, are you a grandparent raising your grandchildren? 84% of the Quinault tribal members that had participated in my survey, and there was over 200, 84% of these folks are elders raising their grandkids. Mm-hmm. And so we have a big gap here because the elders don't understand the education system because a lot of them are dropouts. Our elders are working in the field. They're still having to work today because they're raising their grandchildren. So there's a lot that ties into that. And so coming back to where I'm at, this is what I'm talking about. Our elders are such a precious resource amongst us because not only are they raising their grandchildren, but they're also helping out, you know, the communities when there is a death by suicide or whatever the event may be. They definitely step in and help out. So that's what I wanted to share, and I hope it's helpful.
Thank you